Namaste. Today we'll talk about psychoanalysis and sports. Under this topic, we shall touch upon aspects such as social infantilism, sublimation, acting out, and health. Apart from therapy room, psychoanalysis can be applied to a variety of contexts, clinical and non-clinical. One such non-clinical application is its application to social situations, which also includes sports. It will be very fascinating to reveal ourselves to our own hidden aspects related to sports. So let us do this journey with our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, Mr. Vaidya. Mr. Vaidya, can we start with why you think application of psychoanalysis to sports is so interesting and maybe necessary also?
Psychoanalysis claims to be a mother science in the area of the mind. Psychoanalysis is interesting. Sports is also interesting. And therefore, application of psychoanalysis to sports also is interesting to many people. There is another aspect to it. Sports is a very important element of social activities that we have. And across human civilization, we don't find any society where sports was not there. So there is something very fundamental, very archetypal, very indispensable about this whole zone of sports in human civilization. That being so important, it is good to apply psychoanalysis and find what insights we get there. Sports by itself is not a homogeneous entity. It's a very heterogeneous entity. It's actually a category of activities which we club together under the name of sport. There are individual sports, say for example, an athlete running 100 meters or a 4-kilometer marathon. He's doing it all alone, and everyone is doing it all alone. All those were competing. And then we have a single tennis match or a single badminton match where two people are playing it out against one another. And then we have team sports like cricket, football, or hockey, where a team full of people is playing another team full of people. And then we have extremely intellectually driven sports, which are like, say, for example, chess or something like some games of cards, or in the recent times, we can look at computer games, which a person can play individually with another person or in groups or groups versus groups. And all these situations are very interesting situations because much of what happens in the area of sport happens by choice. It's an extremely voluntary activity. It is not a compulsion. It is not a necessity. It is not a survival driven activity. It's an extremely voluntary, choice based activity. And therefore, the choice making elements, which are both conscious and unconscious, they come to the fore. And it's very interesting to see what we can see there. Now, if we go into the motivations for sport, we can categorize them into two categories: a set of objective, rational, and conscious motivations, and a set of unconscious motivations. The conscious, objective, rational motivations are very clear. Sports is healthy. It enhances your body, your stamina, your mind, your emotional capabilities. It enhances social bonding. It allows for enhancement of social skills. So at every level, body, energy, emotion, mind, all these levels sport has something healthy to provide us. And therefore, there is a rational, conscious, healthy motivation towards sport. So that's a conscious set of motivations. But then there are unconscious factors also at play. And this is where it is very interesting for psychoanalysis. That what are the unconscious factors at play, which may not be necessarily rational, but they are at play. And we see that those unconscious factors bring out enormous amount of both positive and negative emotions. So we have people who are in exuberance, who are in ecstasy, who completely overcome their inhibitions and become expressive, almost histrionic. And at the same time, we have the pathological part which comes up, the infantile part, the pathological part that comes up. Even as a part of sublimation happens, there is a very big part which is pathological. So hidden anger, pain, guilt, shame, envy, aggression, sexuality, group processes, living through identification, all those unconscious processes also are at work in sport. So we look at the conscious set of motivations, the rational, conscious, healthy, goods category of motivations, and an unconscious category of motivations which have many problem areas in them. And these unconscious motivations pertain to individual psychology as well as group psychology. And both of them are very important, not only because it allows us to understand ourselves and our societies better, but also because sport is an activity where countries, companies, and even global institutions, they invest billions of dollars every year. And billions of dollars are also poured in by people who watch them on television or consume products related to sports, or go there to be an audience or watch on television. So from an economic standpoint, from a time consumption standpoint, the investment that the world makes in the zone of sport is substantial, and therefore it's necessary to understand it deeper. And one way to do it is to apply psychoanalysis to the unconscious uh, motivations and processes which are found in the zone of sports, both in the players and the audience.
That's really interesting, Mr. Vaidya. Now, I think once you had mentioned of Osho, he said that something about football. So, can you share what, tell us or explain to us what he shared?
Well, he was not referring to the healthy part of the sport. Right? The healthy part of the sport says that we should all be sports people all our lives, because it keeps us healthy, it keeps us agile, it keeps the whole system at its optimum level. So that's the positive part of sport, that from a positive standpoint, we should all be in sports all our lives. We may have age appropriate sport, we may have profession appropriate sport, but we all should have a sport in our life. That's one positive part of it. Osho was not referring to that. He was referring to the unconscious, pathological, infantile part that we see in this whole um, zone of sports. And he gave the example of a football match. He said, you can see in the football match two teams, maybe 8 to 10 people, whatever the size, all of them who are 18 plus to 30, 32, trying to kick a ball in the ground, trying to snatch a ball from each other, almost as though they were 10-year-olds. Because the content of the football game, if you look at the maturity level of the content of that game, it is of a 10-year-old. Where you snatch the ball and you put the goal into the other part, it's a very childlike activity. So it is not like chess. It's a very childlike activity. The content of a football game and the content of a chess or a poker game are very different. So the players have regressed and they are behaving in an infantile way. So their mental age is 10 years when they are playing the game. And as though this was not enough, 100,000 people sitting in the stadium, they also regress to the age of 10 when they cheer and they start identifying and taking interest in the game. And that does not stop here. A million people are watching it on television. So it's a kind of a mass regression to infantilism, where the mental age almost becomes 10 years, and doesn't matter how educated or mature or aged you are, you start losing everything and taking interest almost fanatically and with a singular focus onto just putting that uh, 1 feet diameter ball in the goal post of the other team. I mean, it's such a childlike activity. So Osho used to point out that uh, at the mass level, given a chance, people regress to an infantile level. And when we look at the sport area, you can see it very evident that when the necessity, compulsion, pressure is removed and people are free to do what they want to do, most people regress into something very infantile and childlike. Very few are able or willing to remain in a mature adult state. It almost looks as though the mature adult state uh, is something which is very precariously maintained. It's a high energy, tiring operation. Whereas the default state, which gives you the pleasure of inertia, indolence, and indulgence, is the state of regressing into something childlike or infantile. And I think that comment is true for a large number of sports when we look at the psychological state of the players and the audience.
This was again very interesting, Mr. Vaidya, and I'm sure many people are going to hate us and hate Osho also for saying this.
Right.
But anyway, okay, we come to the third question. Can we take to the activity of general nature and activity of sports?
Yeah, we can divide activities into two: general nature activity and sports. Now, when we say sport, essentially we are referring to an activity which has do's and don'ts. You cannot have any sport without do's and don'ts. So if you have a football game, the do's are that you will have to score goals, and don'ts are that you won't use your hands or certain parts of your body, or you won't push another player. So there cannot be any sport without do's and don'ts. Now, what these do's and don'ts are and why people like only these do's and don'ts is a deeper issue. It is like if you look at a large number of sports, they have to do with a ball, right? And something to do with a ball. For example, in football, you kick it. In hockey, you hit it. In cricket, you bowl it and bat it. In snooker, you use a stick to push it forward. In golf, again, you hit it. But essentially something to do with a ball. And this has deeper psychoanalytic implications as to why people like predominantly certain kinds of sports. Does it have an unconscious interpretation to it? And this is where a sport activity is different from a general activity because it has its own do's and don'ts. And the question is why people have developed a consensus on these do's and don'ts, and why these do's and don'ts give you so much of pleasure, because of which you accepted these do's and don'ts. So Wittgenstein used to say that game essentially is a set of rules of do's and don'ts. And this is what is true of every game. And our idea is psychoanalytic going to exploration of why people like only this set of do's and don'ts, obviously because they get high amount of pleasure So what is so pleasurable about this set of do's and don'ts? So that is a deeper psychoanalytic inquiry, and we can look at each sport one by one. What can kicking a football mean? Kicking the ball mean in football? What can hitting the ball in hockey mean? What can uh, putting the ball in the hole in the snooker mean? Or what can hitting a shuttlecock in badminton mean? So a deeper uh, psychoanalytic inquiry into the do's and don'ts and into the very content of the game is something which is very interesting to explore our own nature in this area of sport. And of course, you can go into um, sports which are not in vogue any longer. 20, 30 years back, there were many games which were played very organically in the streets and are no longer in fashion. But we can go into the psychoanalytic analysis of those games also, and why in this march of survival of the fittest, those games could not survive.
Yeah, that's so true, Himanshuji. Like nowadays, all these sports are like so popular, and some of the sports or games rather, which were so popular, like the local ones like kabaddi or kho or even ice spice, a number of things I think which have just completely gone out of circulation.
There's also an element of what corporatization and corporate marketing does to you. So I think corporatization of sports and corporate marketing of certain sports has actually completely altered the natural hierarchy of sports. And people's preferences, as usual, are hijacked by corporate communication.
True. Now we come to the second aspect of sports, which is the emotions which are involved in the players and in the audience.
So let us look at both of them. The players, they have three different kind of emotions which are coming up. A healthy category of emotions which have to do with enhancing the potential of oneself, a pursuit of excellence, a sportsman spirit, a selfless activity, and a healthy activity, and also a social activity to give joy to others. So these are some of the positive emotions which the players experience, emotions and ideas which players experience. Then there are some unconscious and difficult emotions which they experience. Emotions of anger, fear, pain, guilt, shame, envy, disgust, almost a destructive aggression towards the other. And these are individual level emotions. And then there is a group identification, that the player identifies with the team, and the team's victory or defeat is identified with the honor of a larger society. So that creates a second level of identification, and that creates huge amount of pressure on the player. We can see it in football matches, in cricket matches, how much pressure it creates just because the victory or defeat is attached to something which is like honor of a collectivity or pride of a collectivity. Now, when we look at the audience also experiences three different sets of feelings and ideas. One, they are there for a good social occasion. They are often there spending time with friends. They are entertaining themselves and free from everyday routine. They are there to really participate in something healthy and experience something excellent, which they themselves cannot achieve, but they would like somebody else to achieve and positively commend that person. So this is a set of positive motivations. Then we have those unconscious feelings that they feel exactly like the players. all those difficult feelings of anger, pain, guilt, defeat, victory, inferiority, not victory, defeat, inferiority, guilt, shame, destructive aggression, and they also are identified with the team or to the country or to the society at large or some group. And because of that, they go almost hysterical. So they don't take the pressure is on the player, but they do go completely hysterical and completely psychotic at times when emotions go out of control. And they are there often uh, to feel those emotions and indulge in a kind of a catharsis. So watching of sports almost is like a social cathartic situation, a mass catharsis sanctioned by society.
Next question. Uh, this is like quite an unrelated thing, but a strong aspect related to sports is of superiority, victory, and pride. And these feelings involve social collectivities like the whole teams, clubs, and even countries. Can you explain this?
Because uh, as we said, the sports involve both individual aspect and the collective aspect. Take for example, a India-Pakistan match. If India loses the match, 1 billion people go into mild depression for 3 hours. And that is true in Argentina and Brazil when a football match is won or lost. People either go manic and crazy in ecstasy, or they go into depression. The identification is so low, so strong. So the individual and the collective, both aspects of psychology are at play. There are some emotions individuals experience as individuals, but a very large range of very strong emotions they experience as part of groups. And the group victory, group pride, group humiliation is very much at stake in the sport. In that sense, sport doesn't remain an innocent sport. It almost acquires the flavor of a micro war between collectivities. And this micro war is because of these notions of pride, victory, defeat, and identification with the group. So it's also a very sociological phenomenon where an individual identifies with a collectivity and then for the sake of the collectivity is ready to go completely hysterical, either in feeling feelings or even at times in attacking somebody else. And group violence is a very common feature of this hysterical outpouring and acting out that we often see in the zone of sports.
Psychoanalytically, like, can you say why are the players and the audience doing what they are doing?
Now that is a very interesting question because that brings us to many aspects of sports. First, what is the content of the sport? Like in hockey, you hit the ball. In cricket, you hit the ball. In chess, you just put the pieces one over the one against the other. So what is psychoanalytically so pleasing about the content of the game? And then we have the do's and don'ts. That why certain do's and don'ts are more acceptable than others. So that is the second part of it. Now take for example, psychoanalytically speaking, what are the psychoanalytic nuances related to say snooker? You hit the ball with a long stick and put it into a hole. Right? Now you can easily draw Freudian inferences from this. Then we look at chess. It's an extremely aggressive activity. It looks to be very peaceful and gentle. It looks like a gentleman's game, but it's an extremely aggressive game in the sense it just involves killing of everyone. You kill the camel, you kill the elephant, you kill the um, the minister, and then you are trying to kill the queen or the king. So actually it's a massacre on the hardboard. It's extremely aggressive activity, but it is not seen as such. It looks to be a very peaceful gentleman's game. It is the last thing to be a gentleman's game. It's an extremely violent activity at an unconscious level. In a very archetypal activity, just look at who is there on the hardboard. You are killing all kinds of animals. You are offering your soldiers to be killed by the other so that you can kill their elephant. The elephant is more worth than your soldier. So if it was to be used in the school teaching, it should not be used. So it's an extremely aggressive activity. Take for example, the aggression that you see on the football field. The aggression is different. It is not meant in killing anyone, but it's meant in running, physical activity and kicking the ball. The ball is kicked so hard. In hockey, also you kick the ball so, I mean, you hit the ball so hard. So these are extremely aggressive games. Nothing wrong. I mean, I'm not saying it's a pathological aggression always, but it's an aggressive game. So then we have the do's and don'ts. That why certain do's and don'ts are acceptable and others are not. So there is another psychoanalytic element to it. Then we look at the motivations behind it and we see that psychoanalytically speaking, sport is a very good activity for catharsis. A volume of emotions come out. So catharsis is very, very important. That is a very important element of participation in sport and being an audience in sport. And it happens through identification. So psychoanalytically, people are living out their Oedipal victories. They are punishing the bad breast. They are trying for an Oedipal victory of that shield. So two teams are fighting for that cup. That shield becomes the coveted prize, and there is a fight for it. It's an Oedipal fight, and somebody wins. And similarly, in chess, you just bring out all your aggression in terms of the move. And it's actually a zero-sum game, a very tribal zero-sum game. Either I win or you win. There's nothing like both of us can be together. So most sports end up as zero-sum games. Right? One has to win, the other has to go down. So we see a lot of emotions coming out, and not only in terms of the sport as it was originally designed, but over a period of time, players innovate, audiences innovate, and they create occasions to express even more of the emotions and feel more of the emotions. As though unconsciously both of them know this is a socially sanctioned catharsis and they should make the most of it.
Does sports not have a healthy aspect to it?
Yes, it has. Um, as I said, it's a very healthy thing to do. It has positive aspects at every level of our being. The physical body, the energy levels, emotions, mind, in development of our full potential, pursuit of excellence, in developing our social skills, in developing higher qualities like selflessness, not getting too identified with the ego, being friends with somebody you lose to, giving up your self-interest for the sake of the team, stretching the human potential. All these are very positive areas of sport. And therefore I said, when we look at the positive aspect of sport, we should all have a sport in our life across our lives. The difficulty arises when our interest or participation is not governed by the positive set of motivations, but an unconscious set of pathological motivations take over.
Are we using sports in psychotherapy?
Not really, because much of psychoanalytic psychotherapy and even the cognitively driven therapies, they are centering around the principle reflecting, not acting. So action is not at the center except for behavioral therapy or psychodrama. So action is not at center usually, and living out or acting out is seen as something which is to be kept away and not really something to be encouraged. So we are really not using sport as much as we should for our healing purposes. And I think possibly in the behavioral school or psychodrama school, they may have some variations of it. In area of children, we do use it. They do use play therapy. But in case of adults, the use is not so much. And I think this is an area where quite an amount of innovation is needed to use sport for therapeutic purposes. And particularly now with so many computer games being available, the scope has increased immensely.
So maybe eventually something like now we have art therapy. Maybe it can be like sports therapy or involving sports.
It will be a combination of computer games and virtual reality. That will be the next frontier of behavioral therapy, and there sport can be used, right, in various ways by combining these two.
Is psychoanalysis itself not a sport?
If by that you mean it is something shallow and entertaining, the answer is no. Psychoanalysis is too profound to be
No, I think not at all, because even sports are very profound. I think it's just made into be like an entertaining activity.
that would be a minority of them. For example, if you look at sports which is tied up with yoga or martial arts, there you see the profoundness.
Right.
But most sports, the profoundness is not so much, whereas in psychoanalysis, it's a far more profound area. It's not entertainment. In fact, it is positively painful in most aspects as we undergo to explore the difficult parts of ourselves and do the catharsis. So it's not entertainment at all. Some people do say that it can turn into narcissistic entertainment if there is a collusion between the two, patient and the therapist, but that is in the minority of cases. So the first response is, if by that we mean psychoanalysis is not profound or always pleasurable, the answer is no. Second response is, if you play the game of definitions and you define sport in a way which covers psychoanalysis also, then of course there is no escape, because it's a trap of definition. It's a stretch of definition. So that is a second response. The third response is, if you focus on this word called play, then Winnicott comes in very strongly, because Winnicott was very adamant, not adamant, but had the focus and a strong belief that many activities in life are actually forms of play. And in the therapy room, there is a play going on. And there is a transitional space between reality and fantasy in which we operate. And in this transitional space, the play happens. And in that play, exploration and healing happens. So if you look at it from that point of view, then yes, there is a play. And if by play we mean a sport, then yes, you can call it a sport, but then you'll have to define it very differently than an ordinary sport like a hockey or a football or something else.
Okay, that's pretty clear. We come to our last question. How do you think sports will evolve in future, and how can psychoanalysis make use of it?
Uh, I think the evolution will be led by technology, virtual reality, and research. Research in terms of well-being, what sports are good for well-being of the body. And positive psychology will bring in quite an amount of insights to create sports which enhance our well-being and happiness. And technology and virtual reality will be very great aids in that. Now, how we have to incorporate is we really need to uh, open up ourselves to incorporating this new sports and use creativity and innovation to create problem specific sports, objective specific sports, human potential enhancement specific sports with a very focused objective in mind. And that calls for a lot of creativity and openness and some flexibility of frame and the shift of focus from technique to the objectives.
Okay, Mr. Vaidya, thank you so much. I think this was a very novel kind of topic for all of us.
Right.
And we really enjoyed exploring this whole thing of sports and psychoanalysis interaction. Okay, we end here. Do write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
That's